Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Crypto Live League. It's your favorite hosts, Benton, Bentuan27, and myself, Ken Garofalo. How you guys doing today?
What's up, man? Happy Friday. Glad to be here. Excited about the topic for today, too.
I know, really cool topic. A lot of people are wondering what's going on with ETH 2.0. Why are they trying to go to a proof-of-stake model? What are the requirements? What kind of advantages will it bring? So we are here to give you guys all that information today, a very basic overview of what is ETH 2.0. And for all of you that don't know, this new format of the show allows the audience to ask questions. So wherever you are viewing this show right now, feel free to type into the comment section. We will bring up your question and answer it here live on the show. So it's important to note, guys, that we are getting all of today's information from Consensys' website. We're going to share this on the screen here in just a second, but this information is public. So we're just basically giving you guys an overview from their fact sheet. The exact website for this fact sheet, I'm going to bring this up as well. Consensys.net/knowledge -base /Ethereum -2 fact. So this is basically a culmination of all frequently asked questions. It gives you a really good overview of what ETH 2.0 is. And so that's exactly what we are going to do for you guys here. But before we get into it, I want to remind people watching that they can sponsor this show, right? If you are watching and you have a business or a project and you want to sponsor this show, reach out to us. At this point, our only sponsor is Block Relations, but we would definitely like to see new sponsors come on the show. So again, let me just play the little promo from Block Relations before we get into this ETH 2.0 fact. All right, guys, Block Relations, that's for all your public relations, marketing, and business innovation needs. So, Benton, before we get into this, have you heard anything about ETH 2.0? Like, just from, just from what you've heard from the, just interacting with all these people you're talking to, what is your perception of what's going on with ETH 2.0?
Yeah, so I know there has been a lot of bumps along the road so far, and I read this great comparison a few months ago. It was like you're trying to change out the engine of a moving car while it's moving. So I thought that like really hit home with me, and I was like, yeah, that's kind of exactly what they're doing. But yeah, ETH 2.0 has had kind of some setbacks here in the beginning. From what I heard in the community, things are kind of now moving swimmingly in the right direction, which is awesome. And obviously the benefits of ETH 2.0 are going to be the scalability and the ability to handle much higher traffic volumes, which I think is what we're all looking for.
Yeah, so I mean, you hit right on that point there. The scalability aspect, the ability to handle more transactions is also going to be a major benefit of ETH 2.0 outside of just going to proof of stake. From what it currently has is proof of work. So proof of work, for anyone that doesn't know, is very electricity intensive, requires specific mining machines to basically compete to guess this random number to be able to win the lottery rights to mine the next block. So all that computational power can cost thousands of dollars throughout the course of a month. And I can attest to this from mining Bitcoin in 2015. I had about a $1,200 electricity bill and only mined 2 Bitcoin at the time, which was only $200 per Bitcoin. So it wasn't worth it. Not in our state, Massachusetts.
Right.
Now, states like Nevada and Washington State, which have the lowest costs for recreational electricity, you might be able to break even. But even you might need renewable energy at this point because of how competitive and how difficult it has become to mine proof of work blockchains. So that's what ETH 1 is. We'll call it the current version of ETH is ETH 1.0. It is proof of work. It is transitioning into proof of stake. So ETH 2.0 is also called ETH 2. It's also been dubbed Serenity. And it's the next upgrade to the Ethereum blockchain. So it's going to be done in multiple phases. It has already started with phase 0 here in 2020. And each phase will improve the functionality and performance of Ethereum in different ways. So I know you said the analogy of trying to change the engine out of a car while it's driving. That's certainly, a buzzy kind of hot way to compare this. But what it's broken down here, they have some quotes from people that say it's more like trying to upgrade a one-lane highway into a multi-lane highway, where you may close down a section of that road where cars are still able to travel in like the breakdown lane.
Right.
And the side of the highway is being built and expanded and tested rigorously until it's ready for cars to drive on. And then that barrier in between the two is removed, and then all the cars can drive on this, massive lane highway. So that's, a more friendly way. Yeah. So two primary improvements are being introduced with ETH 2.0: proof of stake and shard chains. So proof of stake, why, currently ETH 1.0 runs on a consensus mechanism known as proof of work, right? POW. We all know what that is. We just went over it. Physical computing power, miners, electricity. Have you ever tried mining any kind of proof of work chain yourself, Benton?
I have not, man. The electricity bills scare me, and I would love to build my own rig. It's just I've not investigated that. I might in the future, but I mean, I always get scared away if I hear it's just not worth it when the juice isn't worth the squeeze when it comes to the electricity price.
Right. So that's kept a lot of, lower, non-institutional players out of the space for quite some time. So now we have this alternative, this proof of stake, which is an upgrade that actually enables improved security, scalability, and more efficient energy consumption. You're actually going to be able to become a validator with very little hardware requirements, just a laptop and some basic validator software. So the transition should provide a lot of benefit. We already know there's other proof of stake chains out there in the space, such as Tezos, that have been doing this since inception, that have seen the fruits of proof of stake. And, I think these other chains are starting to come around and realize that proof of stake is the future. So cool to see that. The second big primary improvement is going to be this shard chains concept, where it's a scalability mechanism that drastically improves the throughput of the Ethereum blockchain. So think of it like, currently, there's just a single chain, which is ETH.1. ETH1, we'll call it ETH 1.0. But with this upgrade, you're going to have a single chain made up of multiple chains running simultaneously, validating in parallel. So you don't need to wait for, one transaction to be verified before the next one can be verified. So it's splitting up the Ethereum blockchain in a way that should allow for, in the very bare minimum, a 64 times capability improvement of transactional throughput power. So I believe it's 64 different shard chains are going to be the result of this process here. So currently there's one lane. There will be 64 lanes. The ETH 1.0 lane that everyone travels in now will be part of that 64 shard chains when this does roll out. So this is expected to roll out in phase 1. We haven't hit this yet. We're still in phase 0, which is the initial phase of the roadmap. Let's get into what exactly these phases are and timelines of when we can expect to start seeing some action on them. So also, if the audience watching has any questions, feel free to just put those in the chat. We'll bring those up. Phase 0. So this is the first phase of Ethereum 2.0. It's been dubbed the beacon chain, #beacon chain. This stores, manages the registry of validators, and will implement the proof of stake consensus mechanism for Ethereum 2.0. Again, the original proof of work chain will run alongside the new Ethereum proof of stake chain, ensuring no break in data continuity. So it sounds like there's going to be two separate chains running in tandem here that don't necessarily keep records of each other, right? But it's really this ETH 2.0 chain that's it's being tested, right? So if there's an issue, you're still going to have ETH 1.0 running without a problem, right? So you separate it. It runs in tandem. There's no break in data continuity. And that's what's currently happening. That's currently live. So phase 1, the second phase of Ethereum 2.0, will likely roll out in 2021. Primary improvement of phase 1 is to integrate the shard chains concept, which we talked about. Shard chains are the scalability mechanism, again, split into 64 different chains. At the bare minimum, this will enable 64 times more throughput than the current version of Ethereum. So huge scalability coming. This kind of reminds me when like hardwares on computers went from 1 gigabyte storage to 64 gigabyte storage.
Exactly. Yeah. It just opens up. I like that analogy. That the more and more I start thinking about it, it is very much so like a highway system, and they're just upgrading the highway system. But they're not just jamming everything on top of this first one. They're building out everything on the side, making sure it works, making sure everything's functioning properly, and then they're kind of opening up these lanes. So I find it interesting. I have a quick question for you though, while we're on this phase 0 and 1 here. Proof of stake chains. Just I know, like for example, like Tezos is a proof of stake chain. What other proof of stake chains are out there currently?
Yeah, so there are quite a few of them. I want to say this, was it Peer? Something Peer was the first ever proof of Peer coin. I want to say it was one of the first ever introductions to proof of stake. Peer coin. It's not a huge market cap. I think it's currently ranked number 671. But I believe that was one of the first times we saw proof of stake being introduced. Now Neo might be proof of stake as well. It might be a hybrid model. NEM, XEM might be a proof of stake as well. There's different variations of proof of stake. Like we see liquid proof of stake with Tezos as well. I'm trying to see it. I mean,
is Cardano a chain that's proof of stake as well?
I believe so.
Yeah.
And now they may use different consensus mechanisms, but proof of stake is still a general term for what they're doing for the consensus mechanism. They may dub it a different name.
Okay.
So there are different, intricacies and nuances to all these different chains versions of proof of stake. Like they're not running a copy, a 1-for-1 of the exact requirements for bond requirements with Tezos, or a lockup requirement for ETH 2.0. With proof of stake, you have to really have the validators lock some kind of value up so that if they act malicious, you can slash that value and kind of hurt the validator and disincentivize them from acting poorly.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. I see. It looks like Dash is maybe another proof of stake coin.
Dash, right? I'm sure there's probably a filter on one of these websites like CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap where you can just filter by proof of stake and then see a whole list of proof of stake coins. Yeah. If not, that'd be a great idea for someone to develop a filter like that. So it's interesting to know here on this roadmap, it doesn't really give specific dates, right? It's not really predictable governance. And, it's not a decentralized upgrade to the chain, right? So there's still some kind of central organization like the Ethereum Foundation that's organizing these hundreds of different participants and developers to create the next protocol upgrade here for Ethereum. So we do see that differ from something like Tezos, which has a predictable decentralized governance model.
Do you think, that's obviously by design though, that they're not trying to hit these kind of certain milestones. I think it's like a little bit of like under promise, over deliver kind of thing. Like, oh, we'll get to it next year at some point. And then it's like, boom, maybe it's 2 months, maybe it's 9 months.
Right. And the point of being centralized versus decentralized, Vitalik did comment on one of my videos 2 years ago when I think this concept was first introduced. And he basically said, yeah, that's the point. We want to be centralized so that the right people are making these types of decisions and there's no lack of efficiencies in the upgrade process, right? It should be controlled by a central authority. That's his whole point, right? Yeah. He at the time didn't think that the decentralized governance model was going to be efficient. It's kind of interesting to see how things have played out since then, where you see a decentralized governance core protocol mechanism like what Tezos has already upgrade itself numerous times over, where ETH 2.0 is still kind of flushing itself out with these undefined dates in the roadmap. But who's going to be the big winner in the end? That's still up for debate, right? Who's got the larger market cap right now? Who's got the network effect right now, right? So is it a first mover advantage, or is it because of this central body that helps control the development cycle?
Good question. Now, is ETH 2.0, is it technically a hard fork? Is that, do you know?
So I don't believe so. So as we kind of got into, it's going to be running in tandem. And then this ETH 1.0, the chain that we currently see, is sort of going to merge into the 64 shard chains. It's going to just become one of these shard chains. So to me, it seems like this shard chain number one is just going to have a longer tail of history than the other shard chains, the other 63 of them, right? But they all sort of validate in parallel. That's why they're able to increase throughput. So that is a good question.
Yeah, I was just curious because I know at one point, Ethereum hard forked because of the DAO hack. So I just didn't know like if that's the same thing. It sounds like it's obviously different.
Yeah, and in these docs here, it actually does reference that you can't buy a new version of Ethereum for ETH 2.0. Right. It's going to be the same Ethereum that you currently see out there that will eventually exist on this new set of chains, right? This new set of shard chains. So there's no new asset to buy. You're not getting airdropped anything. If you don't choose to participate in ETH 2.0 as a validator or as a staker, you're not going to lose anything, right? You can just sit in your ETH the way it currently stands. So phase 2, so they go at phase 0, which we're currently in, phase 1, which is not yet, and phase 2, which is the third phase of Ethereum 2.0 will be launched in 2021 or 2020. So again, very vague on the dates here. I guess this is to allow them to address any upcoming issues that may appear that they haven't run into yet. You always, like you said, under promise, over deliver. So they're giving themselves some room there.
Yeah, it's a good move.
It is. Yeah, it totally is. They're not held to certain dates by anyone at this point, right? Maybe they have investors, but they shouldn't be answering to the investors. They should really, it's a decentralized community of holders at this point. So there's no specific deadline for them to make these upgrades.
Right. And I also think like too, it's like the more time that goes on and these problems that kind of linger with Ethereum, it's like there could be other chains that kind of step in. I'm not saying that will happen because, I mean, by market cap, Ethereum's the most dominant right now. But like, it seems like some of these other chains are trying to develop and get into, for example, DeFi and try to kind of build up their DeFi on their chains. I don't think they'll have the same success as Ethereum, but I think the longer Ethereum waits to make all these updates, like the more possibilities that you kind of expose yourself to.
Absolutely. So that's the risk of Ethereum taking too long to make these upgrades, is that another player comes in, provides the same kind of efficiencies that ETH 2.0 aims to provide, and takes the market share away from them. Mm-hmm. And that's what's happening right now. You're seeing it. You're seeing people being attracted to these alternatives where they're seeking some sort of passive return in terms of staking, or in terms of they need to develop their app on a chain that supports more throughput and cheaper transactions. So that's what the risk Ethereum's dealing with right now. Yeah, they might have the largest market cap, which can be used for collateral in DeFi products. Mm-hmm. But, who's to say that doesn't change before this product gets released? Everyone's targeting them. They're the ones with the target on their back. Everyone's trying to be that ETH killer.
We'll see.
So an important piece to note here. So they do plan on turning off proof of work on the Ethereum 1.0 chain once this phase 2 is complete. So by 2022 or the end of 2021, there will be no more proof of work in Ethereum. That's a pretty staunch stance for a chain that started as proof of work and has denied proof of stake being an efficient manner for so many years until this recent announcement. But, everyone has the right to make adjustments and stay agile, right? So what will change when ETH 2.0 is completed? What will the improvements mean? So again, scalability, throughput, and security, added security to the public mainnet. Will not eliminate any data history. So transaction records, asset ownership, everyone that owns the CLL token will still have that record once this ETH 2.0 switches over. The beacon chain, which will be the backbone, will be fully functional and with the existing 1.0 chain, ensuring continuity. So again, this points to reference from Joseph Chow, who was the one who explained it with that the highway analogy of closing down a portion of the highway, building it up, adding lanes, and then taking that barrier away once it's been fully tested. So I love that analogy.
Yeah.
So what will happen to the current Ethereum 1.0 chain? Well, it will effectively become the first shard on Ethereum 2.0. Like we talked about, it'll just be one of those 64 shards. So you're not losing data history again, and it's sort of just transitioning into a part of the 64 shards on Ethereum 2.0. So what is the release date of Ethereum 2.0? Phase 1 is anticipated in 2021. So we're currently in phase 0. In a second here, we're going to bring up a graphic that shows all the people that have already committed ETH into deposits into a smart contract that show, there was a certain threshold that needed to be reached, a certain amount of people needed to contribute, and a certain amount of ETH needed to be contributed until this phase 0 would hit. That has been hit, and people are already starting to actually earn staking rewards from this process. But there's a caveat, and we'll get into that in just a second. It's a big caveat.
Yeah.
So what is proof of stake? We pretty much went over this, but this does note that there is a specific amount of Ethereum that will be required if you want to be a validator. It's going to be, throw it on the screen here, 32 ETH stake. Okay, so if you don't have 32 ETH, I believe there are pools that you can deposit into. Similarly, that we see as like staking as a service that exists from like different bakers within the Tezos ecosystems, right? So you don't, different mining pools do the same thing with proof of work. So if you don't have enough computing power to win the rights to mine a block in proof of work, you would join a pool. So similarly here, if you don't have enough ETH to become your own validator, you can join a pool with less ETH being deposited. But 32 is the big number here. So if you want to do this on your own, you need 32 ETH.
Yeah, that's a good point, though. I don't know if you want to touch on this caveat now or later. I just thought it was interesting. Because I was looking into this. I was like, okay, 32 ETH, that's a lot. I was like, all right, looking at my second options. All right, the pools are kind of a cool concept. However, I saw there was some sort of timeline where like you have this stuff locked in for, it could be a year to like 2 years, and like there's no guarantee with like what the yields would be when you stake that. So I thought it was interesting to know that the time frame was kind of very variable, and you didn't really know what was at the end of the tunnel, so to speak.
That's it. Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. That is the caveat. This stuff is going to be locked up for an unknown amount of time until ETH 2.0 has been fully released through phase 2, right? Which could be in 2022, right? So by doing this, you need to realize, yes, you can be racking up staking rewards, increasing your principal balance of ETH, but you're not going to be able to withdraw these rewards. You're not going to be able to withdraw this principal. It's a one-way street, it's one-way deposit. That won't be released to you until ETH 2.0 has completed its integration phases. So think about it. I mean, that's the risk you have to take. You cannot buy and sell the ETH, and withdraw it from this contract. It is locked.
You got to have strong hands, man.
Well, no hands. You got to have no hands. You have no option, right?
Exactly. Yeah, very interesting. And I noticed too, like I read this article about before the genesis of phase 0, like they almost didn't make the funding that they needed to. Like it was literally within like the last like 3 or 4 days they met that mark where it was like how much ever ETH it required, like 800,000 ETH or something to be deposited, and like they've reached that mark within like the last 3 days of the deadline, which I thought was crazy, but they did it. So hats off to them.
Absolutely, and let's bring up that graphic right now. Actually, this is a good time to discuss it.
Yeah.
So you're right. How do you become a validator on ETH 2.0, right? And what are those metrics that you just mentioned? So the website is going to be launchpad.ethereum.org. This is where you're going to find all your information on how to become a validator and how to help secure the ETH 2.0 network, how to deposit Ethereum, and what software to download to start participating in this. So here's your stats right here, your network status. So the threshold was this 524,000 Ethereum.
Okay.
Clearly we see here, this is now surpassed that by, looks like a multiple of 3. So yeah, it did have a deadline, and it was struggling to reach the amount of ETH needed to be locked for that deadline. But, last second here, it looks like they came through and they've far surpassed that now to this point. You'll see here the staking rewards, as we often see with proof of stake networks that are bootstrapping, are much higher in terms of APR in the beginning and sort of go down over time, over the years. as more people stake, it'll become more diluted, as the APR will show here on this curve. So it's interesting. It looks like it flatlines around the 6%, 5% mark after a few years. So that's pretty much industry standard. We see a lot of proof of stake chains offering a yield, a yearly return around this 5 to 8% area. So
Yeah,
interesting to see that they themselves. I wonder how much they borrowed from a Tezos. You know, like seeing the success that Tezos had bootstrapping and the success they've had in percentage of people participating in proof of stake. I wonder what kind of metrics they took from that.
yeah, I don't know, but it does seem to me like a couple other projects set the precedent with Tezos, obviously, kind of being one of the first liquid proof of stakes. So I think it's curious to see what Ethereum pulled from these other projects to be like, hey, we kind of like that. Let's add this in.
Exactly. And if something works, why not? Why not build off of it, right? It's public information. It's out there. It's open source documentation. Why not take what is out there and make it better if you can, right? You can certainly attempt to. So again, we touched on how do I get rewarded for staking? We touched on it being locked until ETH 2.0 is fully functional. Any kind of rewards or stake that if you put it into this pool or into these smart contracts. So interesting to note. So this 32 ETH, it will get slashed if you're acting malicious. What is malicious mean? Well, if you win the rights to mine the next block and you go offline for any reason and you don't mine that block in time, in a timely fashion, well, you can get slashed. And for this type of malfeasance, you get slashed about what the reward would be for that block. So it's not a huge amount of slashing that would take place. You could just earn that slash back next time you're online and had the rights to mine a block, right? The epoch is every 384 seconds, about 6.5 minutes. So that's every time a reward is paid out, a staking reward is paid out. So if you had the rights to mine every single block, you'd be getting rewards every 6.5 minutes. So this is all cool to think of. Yeah, I like that. I actually would love to see some sort of dashboard showing me, every 7 minutes, the projected ETH that I'm due for as a reward. Even with Tezos, I wish there was more in terms of visualization of those numbers, of those rewards. I think. Yeah, go ahead.
The question is now, okay, gas fees, right? They've been a problem for ETH1.
Yes.
I'm wondering what this whole new, proof of stake model now means for gas fees. I am assuming that gas fees are going to go down, if they will even be there. I would hope that would be the case, because now that you have all these highways, there's not as much demand for these validators to validate each transaction. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I'd be curious to hear your insights.
Yeah, I mean, reading through this documentation, it didn't really mention anything about gas fees, but I could speculate just basic economics, right? If there's more supply, less demand, the price should go down, right? The fees should drop. The gas fees should drop. So instead of paying $80 in gas to yield farm some pickle finance, right? You might be paying 80 cents or less, or 8 cents or less, right?
It would be great if there was no gas fees. How about that?
That's an interesting concept. No gas fees.
I mean, it's like, I think that's kind of an appeal. I forget what other, there's a couple other chains out there that have no gas fees. And I hate to say this, I think like Ripple with XRP, like they don't have transaction fees, or they're extremely minimal. Like I feel like that's kind of got to be the playing field you got to compete on.
Yeah, I mean, think if you're an application or you're executing on a smart contract for your users, like we do on cryptoliveleak.org with the attention mining mechanism. Every time we have to pay out rewards to someone, it's costing us. We have to eat that cost on the smart contract, or we could transfer that cost to the user. But every time, someone wants to cash out, we have to raise that threshold. So it takes them a longer time. So there's less eating of these costs that takes place. Mm-hmm. So that limits these applications that can be built on top of a blockchain like this. So gas fees are definitely a barrier to adoption, right? And if chains can get them down to close to zero, that's when you're going to start seeing the actual real world apps using, that you use every day, start using pieces of blockchain in their tech stack for maybe like, storing data or identification, authentication, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It'll actually become feasible. So it's important to note with everything in crypto, there is scams on every doorstep that you look, right? People are always trying to scam you out of your money. So whether or not that's through phishing emails, through bad website links that mirror what the correct website should be, or whether or not that's through a bad deposit contract address, as we see here happening. So they warn. There's been a lot of scams directing users to the wrong contract deposit address for ETH 2.0. Also, the correct deposit address. Do not just send ETH to it. There's a process that you need to follow before depositing. So again, go to that Launchpad website and follow the process. Don't just blindly send ETH to this contract address or any other contract address until you fully understand the steps from the official websites. Make sure the websites are official. Double check, triple check it. This is the contract address. You can check this on Consensys' website. You can check this on Etherscan, and even the Ethereum Foundation has a place that you can check to make sure you're dealing with the right smart contract address.
Exactly.
So what are the risks of becoming a validator on Ethereum 2.0? Well, we talked about losing funds through the slashing. So if you're negligent keeping your device online, or if you're a malicious actor, you're going to lose Ethereum, ETH through a slashing effect. And this is common with any proof-of-stake network. It's a way to disincentivize bad behavior. But this can be solved with just a little amount of care. Keep your device online, make sure your software is up to date, and you won't run into any slashing events. What else is a risk here? I guess there's a risk is, what if ETH 2.0 never materializes, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would happen then? Well, you're still locked in that smart contract with your 30 ETH.
Exactly. I wonder if there's more. Like, it sounded to me, my takeaways from going through all this is that it also has to reach, I guess, more threshold in order to, I guess, complete these next phases. Am I understanding that correctly?
It's possible. I didn't see anything since the next threshold is going to be, let me just bring the roadmap up again here, would be ETH phase 1, right? So this would be the sharding aspect. So maybe there will be more requirements for more deposits to get to that phase. So as they keep requiring more people to pile in, what if those thresholds aren't met? Does it just reset to a new cycle, or is it just dead in the water? Like, what if it never gets to these thresholds? Right. Can they go back and readjust and lower the threshold? I suppose. And these are really the benefits of being a centralized organization that's leading this, right? They could sort of make these adjustments on the fly without having to pass approval with the whole community. So it gives them an ability to be very versatile. So again, we're just wrapping up here, guys. Again, this is just a high-level overview. We haven't seen many questions from the audience. Actually, no questions. So you guys are kind of just letting us talk here today, but maybe there'll be some commentary on this stuff after it gets posted everywhere and has sat for a while. What will happen to the ETH I own now? Nothing. Yeah. Don't worry about it. Just keep doing what you're doing. If you don't want to participate in ETH 2.0 and you just want to hold your Ethereum and not risk anything or take on this additional risk, it will eventually just become part of the new ETH 2.0 chain, the current Ethereum 1.0 chain, and your ETH will be usable as is, right? There's no new version of it. There's no hard fork here. It's sort of like a merging effect that will take place. Commentary from Vitalik. He actually released a really cool document on his Twitter, and it depicts sort of a flow diagram of how he envisions this process, and even some commentary on the next 5 to 10 years on how he thinks Ethereum will develop. So Vitalik has been really the unicorn for the whole crypto space for so long. I think everyone really respects what he has to say. It doesn't matter if he's, wearing a unicorn t-shirt. Everyone takes him very seriously because he is, the mastermind behind Ethereum, the number one developer in this whole ecosystem. I think anyone would be happy to have his insights and contributions to their project. So Go on this website, click the link to that tweet, and you'll be able to see that little diagram that he has there. That's awesome. I think I'll go ahead and retweet that from the Crypto Live Leak account after this as well.
Yeah.
So, guys, what do you think? We want some commentary here. Do you like us discussing ETH 2.0? Should we provide more coverage of ETH 2.0 as it progresses? We want some audience interaction, guys. Come on.
I liked it, man. I've kind of known these topical issues with ETH 2.0, but as I'm kind of unpeeling these layers, I'm pretty fascinated by this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a paradigm shift here to proof of stake. I'm a huge fan of proof of stake. Anything where you can earn something while focusing on like gathering more resources. It's got that like hunter-gatherer mentality to it. Like for me, it was just too hard to get past the electricity bill. I wasn't able to set up solar panels or a water turbine in the brook in the backyard to start getting renewable energy for proof of work. So for me, it's much easier to just go out there, buy a native asset of XTZ, of ETH, right? And have it just deposited in a contract, run some software, and then you're earning some staking rewards being a validator with proof of stake. So I'm a fan. I think proof of stake is the way to go. It's economically, environmentally the right thing to do. It's going to help save our environments. I don't know, but I think I saw some diagrams out there that Bitcoin's proof of work network actually consumes more electricity than certain countries at this point.
I believe it, man. I believe it. I mean, I think the evolution of how things are going to need to evolve is going to be interesting to see. But for example, I saw this this video the other day on like Instagram. There was a miner who was putting their mining machines in like oil, some sort of oil. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. It was like this huge vat of oil, and this machine is just running underneath the oil. I was mind boggled. That was not on the topic, but it was just something interesting I saw while we were on the topic of mining.
Well, they're probably trying to like cool down the components so it produces more, right? And doesn't overheat or something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
I just didn't know they could do that. It was like it's electric currents and fans and everything. Like I was shocked that it was actually working, but that was pretty cool.
Crazy. So, all right, guys, some things to leave you with. Follow us on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel there. Follow us on Twitter. Follow our personal accounts on those social medias as well. Let me just bring those up so you can see what those are. So I'm at Ken Garofalo. Benton is at Bentuan27. We want to see our followers go up. We love interacting with you guys and answering your commentary too. So feel free to tweet at us and tweet at the show. We are looking for a sponsor for the show. Right now it's Block Relations, but if you are out there watching us, you're a wallet, you're a project, you're a blockchain, and you want to have your logo, your video featured on the show, reach out to us. Guys, we'd love to have you. But I guess, until next time.
That's right. Everyone have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend, guys. Take care. Bye.